Caitlyn Clark finally spoke out, and her reaction following the matchup against Puerto Rico completely caught everyone off guard. Just 24 hours after she absolutely demolished the international record books during her debut for Team USA against Senegal, she stepped onto the court to a surreal scene where the opposing coach's daughter waved a poster with her name on it. Cameras tracked her every single footstep, while the tournament directors had already crowned her the ultimate superstar of the event. Suddenly, the offensive schemes drawn up by Kara Lawson and Stephanie White completely stalled out. Kalea Copper went into full hero mode, while Angel Reese seemed determined to freeze our point guard out of the offense. Yet, when the dust finally settled on that utter mess, the way Caitlyn handled the situation will make you love her 1,000 times more. Drop a comment below and tell me if you believe the national squad needs to treat her with more respect. I honestly felt our performance was incredibly disjointed. It definitely did not feel like we brought our A game out there. Paige had a phenomenal night though, and it was still amazing to be on the floor. Personally, my shooting was nowhere near the standard I set for myself. Getting hit with that zone defense genuinely disrupted our entire rhythm. It basically forced us into a crawl, stripping away all those fast break opportunities we usually thrive on. Moving forward, if opponents try that zone trick again, we just have to push the tempo relentlessly and stop them from getting anchored. Wait, we need to pause right here. This generational talent went 8 full months without playing a single competitive basketball game. 8 whole months. First came a painful groin strain, followed by leg issues, and then a wrecked ankle. She only managed 13 appearances during her sophomore pro campaign before vanishing into recovery. Because of that grueling absence, her return to the hardwood for the Stars and Stripes against Senegal carried an enormous question mark. Was the rust going to be unbearable? Could she even find her footing after such a massive break? She stepped off the sideline and, in a mere 19 minutes, completely obliterated 5 separate international world records. We are not talking about one single milestone. 5 historic benchmarks shattered in her return debut as a reserve player. Listen to this crowd erupt as 5 substitutes enter the fray for the red, white, and blue, marking the historic moment this young phenom officially debuts for the senior national squad. The stadium is absolutely packed with her loyal supporters, wearing an ocean of Indiana Fever gear. Hawkeye apparel is everywhere you look, honoring arguably the most transformative female athlete this sport has ever witnessed. She has finally arrived on the biggest stage. Now, let us break down that godly performance. 17 points paired with 12 mesmerizing dimes. But the stat that will truly blow your mind is the fact she had absolutely 0 giveaways before halftime. Not a single mistake. She orchestrated 8 flawless assists in just 2 quarters, fiercely protecting the rock without letting anyone steal it even once. The international governing body literally scoured their historical archives, discovering that no athlete on the planet had ever generated that many scoring passes in one half of a qualifier. She accomplished the impossible during her very first intense matchup after an 8-month hiatus. That is elite basketball mastery. The pass goes to Howard, swung back, then fired right into the paint. The shot bounces perfectly off the glass, showcasing sensational ball circulation. However, the history-making playmaking statistics go way beyond that one half. Tallying 12 total dimes instantly crowned her the supreme leader for playmaking in a United States senior debut. It also stood as the greatest passing debut for any player from any country in the entire history of the International Federation. She claimed the number 2 spot for overall assists in qualifying tournament history, while setting the ultimate passing record for any reserve player walking onto a global court. 5 records, 1 game, exactly 19 minutes. When you can completely swap out 5 players at once and bring a generational weapon off the sidelines, what does that reveal about our terrifying roster depth? Draining that massive shot from downtown is absolutely effortless for her. Sinking a perimeter bomb is practically as simple as a layup. The rotation deployed during the second frame featured her orchestrating the offense next to heavy hitters like Kelsey Plum, Kiki Iriafen, and Ryan Howard. Combined with Monique Billings, that unit operated with such lethal speed and telepathic chemistry that their head coach admitted they elevated the whole squad into another stratosphere. Those exact sentiments came straight from the boss. The leader of the roster watched that 5-woman crew and declared them the catalyst for their dominance. Despite not hearing her name in the starting introductions, she was undeniably the most electrifying force out there. Calling it a great premiere is a massive understatement. This is a warrior returning from a brutal 8-month exile to violently remind the globe why the tournament plastered her face across every single promotional banner. No other superstar wearing those colors received that kind of premier promotional treatment. They built the marketing around her because she is the ultimate magnet. She single-handedly forces everyday viewers to watch and packs those stadium seats to the absolute brim. The executives knew the truth, the crowds felt it, and following that clash with Senegal, the box score cemented her legendary status. She effortlessly shatters the defensive wall to spot the open teammate, whipping a beautiful pass straight to Billings. While everyone worships her collegiate scoring records, she is fundamentally a master playmaker. A massive board on the offensive glass grants the Americans a fresh opportunity. Angel Reese capitalizes on the second chance perfectly, sealing the 9th majestic dime of the night for our superstar point guard. Therefore, heading right into the Puerto Rican showdown, the narrative was incredibly straightforward. We had an icon who just obliterated 5 global records in 19 minutes, commanding the deadliest 5-player unit while the entire planet watched in awe. Any doubts about her readiness vanished. She silenced every single critic during the Senegal massacre before her opponents even broke a sweat in warm-ups. The lingering mystery hung in the air. What was the head coach's brain trust planning for their newly minted star? Would they finally unleash her full speed on the court? Would the entire scoring machine be engineered to highlight the exact brilliance she had just showcased? Surely, staring at those 12 flawless dimes with 0 mistakes would force them to admit she absolutely required total control of the rock. Just holding back, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. We see the phenom shifting the rock directly into the waiting hands of Buchers. The guard launches from deep, catching nothing but pure nylon. That magic was crucial, as the atmosphere down in Puerto Rico 24 hours later was absolutely pulsating. Crowds flooded the stadium while a solitary lens locked onto every single step the rookie took. The opposition's leader even brought his own child, who was proudly gripping a poster for the visitor. Every soul inside that coliseum had bought a ticket just for her. Yet, the second that referee tossed the ball into the air, our tale spirals into absolute chaos. If the initial national squad showdown felt like a beautiful dream, this sequel was an absolute nightmare, entirely defined by brutal, unwatchable basketball. From the starting 5 to the end of the bench, the Americans were completely fractured. The commander treated the hardwood like a laboratory, recklessly shuffling rosters and desperately testing bizarre pairings. We need to dive deep into the actual reality of that island matchup. Sure, the hometown defenders dropped into a heavily fortified zone scheme. They brought immense defensive pressure and generated real panic. However, that defensive structure was merely a distraction. The true poison was festering right there among the American reserves. Whenever pure bitterness collides with raw resentment, it produces the exact disaster we witnessed yesterday evening. The Golden Girl was completely alienated from the offensive flow. Frozen out entirely, actively treated like a ghost. Her own peers blatantly denied her a single touch. You had the star forward sprinting the entire length of the floor, with the rookie trailing right beside her, yet the pass was completely withheld. She forces the issue, barrels forward, dumps it off blindly, and surrenders a highly frustrating loss of possession. That display we all digested was the textbook illustration of sheer spite mingling with unadulterated envy. Kalia decided to wage a one-woman war, entirely abandoning team concepts. We are talking ultimate selfishness, gripping the leather, launching terrible pull-ups, and blindly crashing into walls of defenders. Meanwhile, the squad's deadliest shooter lingered in miles of open space around the arc, yet those essential passes miraculously never arrived. This was not a single mistake, it was a deliberate habit. The razor-sharp, lightning-quick stops that turned the Senegal match into a breeze simply vanished into thin air. Rather than swinging the rock and slicing to the rim, the favorites were bogged down in agonizing, stagnant sets that produced absolutely zero fruit. Our protagonist, who had miraculously steered the most lethal offensive rotation merely 24 hours prior, was reduced to an idle spectator on the court. Playing hero is an absolute disaster when 3 heavily armed defenders are completely blanketing your every move. The sniper is practically begging for it, yet the rock refuses to swing her way. She still manages to deliver a monstrous rejection, quickly followed by a brilliant, sneaky theft. Critics love to whisper about her supposedly weak defense, which is exactly why those clips matter, right before she absorbs a vicious, brutal shot to the skull. Why does her brain always seem to be the primary target for violence in every single contest of her career? And that brings our narrative straight back to the post player. Believe me, the loyal followers witnessing this live picked up on the toxic energy instantly. They charted endless moments where the shooter was completely abandoned. The fundamental logic of the sport screamed for a kickout, yet her teammate actively denied it. This was far beyond a single momentary lapse of judgment. It was a repeated, glaring offense. Digital footage went absolutely viral before the buzzer even sounded for the period. The internet erupted in a fiery rage. We have 4 defenders swarming right in this frame. Notice the quartet stacked up. There goes our final attacker. Another pair trails behind. We are literally executing a massive 5-on-3 advantage in this exact instance. 5-on-3, plain and simple. The math was entirely in our favor. Had anyone possessed the court vision to untangle the mess, the squad would have scored effortlessly. Yet, amidst the baffling chaos, the guard decelerated to let her teammate weave through, giving the enemy ample seconds to reset their barricade. Here is the crucial context. The host nation deployed an impressively tight regional coverage deep into the second period, right before halftime. Truthfully, the ultimate antidote for any stifling scheme is absolute speed, snagging a missed shot or ripping away a steal and immediately sparking an unstoppable fast break. There truly is no superior method for obliterating a defensive barricade. The young phenom did not scream or throw a childish tantrum. Instead, she offered a silent, chilling response that spoke volumes louder than any microphone interview ever could. Upon stepping back onto the hardwood, she acted as if her controversial teammate was completely invisible. Zero eye contact, absolutely no greeting, just icy silence. Her gaze remained fiercely locked on the horizon. Such physical cues are never an accident. They belong to a warrior absolutely exhausted by the disrespect, stripped of any desire to play nice. You absolutely have to see this specific piece of footage first. It honestly had me dying of laughter behind my screen. Keep in mind, this took place during period number 2. We are about to rewind the clock to connect this to the opening moments of the contest. Watch her trot onto the floor, eagerly slapping hands with the squad. High fives all around, pumping the adrenaline. Hyping everybody up, sharing the love, tapping hands. Then comes the anticipation for that final exchange with her rival and absolutely brutally denied. Pure rejection. It is tough to watch. However, the plot gets significantly thicker from there. Once the final buzzer sounded, a journalist fired a point-blank inquiry at the head coach regarding her star rookie, only to hit an impenetrable wall of silence. She did not offer a generic, unity-focused cliché or smoothly transition to another topic. She delivered a cold, undeniable refusal to even utter the requested name. The commander merely babbled about gathering data and trying to solve a chemistry puzzle, totally dodging the elephant in the room. Stating something like that directly after she shattered 5 international records the previous afternoon is absolutely mind-blowing. You already know the truth. The undeniable reality is she racked up 17 points and dished out 12 assists in 19 minutes without making a single mistake. What more evidence do you possibly need? I honestly felt Puerto Rico brought an incredible intensity, battling relentlessly from the opening tip to the final buzzer. Their sheer willpower tested us constantly, scraping for every loose ball to manufacture scoring opportunities out of thin air, making it a wildly turbulent matchup for our squad on both offense and defense. We discussed this openly in the locker room. While we showcased moments of brilliance, we also stumbled through some incredibly rocky patches, which is honestly a blessing in disguise. Hitting a wall every now and then is actually essential for growth. It forces you to untangle complex issues, and right now, our team is still piecing this massive puzzle together. Add in the glaring presence of Stephanie White firmly planted on the sideline. For context, she commands the Indiana Fever, directly overseeing our star player. This is the exact same strategist who burned an entire professional season attempting to force her into a passive role while actively hitting the brakes on her dynamic pacing. Die-hard supporters suffered through this agonizing tactical stubbornness for months on end. The entire defensive-minded philosophy completely strips her of playmaking duties, severely restricts her court vision, and revokes her control over the tempo. That is undeniable reality, not idle gossip. It is simply the brutal truth that loyal followers were forced to witness night after exhausting night. Yet somehow, that very same stifling mindset secured a coaching chair for the national squad, right as our generational talent was being deliberately ignored on the hardwood. Have you noticed the absolute media circus surrounding her right now? Have you checked the latest headlines? The entire planet is obsessing over her, and clearly, certain egos simply cannot tolerate that level of spotlight. Lightning-fast fast breaks and mind-bending assists that veterans have never witnessed in their careers? Apparently, that kind of magic is strictly forbidden here. Pump the brakes immediately, change the scheme, and artificially force the glory onto the rest of the roster. The message was crystal clear that her brilliance was unwanted. The unwritten rule was that others must steal the show. This specific evening was blatantly engineered to elevate rival rookies instead of her. What an absolute tragedy of a basketball showcase, ladies and gentlemen. Let us dissect the ugly truth. One veteran wing absolutely refused to pass the rock. Then you have a key forward intentionally ignoring our star playmaker on countless trips down the floor. Throw in a commander-in-chief who stubbornly refused to let a certain rookie's name cross her lips during the press conference. Finally, add an assistant mastermind who just wasted a full professional campaign actively shrinking her prodigy's impact. If any of these happened in isolation, you might forgive it. However, watching all four nightmares unfold simultaneously, mere hours after she obliterated 5 international milestones, that transcends mere coincidence. That is a targeted conspiracy. If you sit down, study the tape, and contrast the electric possessions she controlled against the stagnant minutes without her, the disparity is earth-shattering. Brace yourself for this. Analyzing these consecutive performances side by side reveals the naked truth about how she serves as the absolute heartbeat of this scoring machine. When facing Senegal, the offense was a masterpiece of motion. She controlled the rock, dissected the opposition before they could blink, and threaded passes to teammates who were completely unaware they were about to score. Go ahead and review that spectacular sequence once more. Watch that powerhouse forward muscle her way to the rim, establishing herself as the dominant offensive threat against the Senegalese defense by the intermission. Sitting currently at 5 points while heavily burdened by 3 infractions, it creates a tense situation. She simply cannot play with the reckless abandon of her veteran counterpart. Our elite shooters were catching miraculous feeds and converting point-blank finishes that felt entirely effortless. The frontcourt enforcers were racking up easy buckets inside without having to manufacture a single move on their own. That is the very essence of her brilliance. Her mere shadow stretches the hardwood to its limits. Because opponents panic over her lethal range and explosive drives, massive driving lanes magically appear for everyone else. The entire scoring system possessed a vibrant, unstoppable pulse whenever she held the reins. Contrast that with the Puerto Rico disaster, where that rhythm utterly vanished. The squad lethargically jogged into position, executing stagnant half-court plays that crashed and burned. The rock became a black hole, off-ball movement completely died, and the lethal fast-break engine that demolished their previous opponents evaporated into thin air. The prodigy privately admitted the team's rhythm felt dreadfully out of sync. Frankly, describing that horrific display as merely out of sync is a massive understatement. We actually had a power forward trying to run the offense. She completely blacklisted our star guard, visibly refusing to surrender the rock on crucial possessions. If you want proof, the terrifying efficiency rating from the Senegal match paints the perfect picture. She logged just 19 minutes as a reserve, yet astronomically outscored the opposition by 35 points during her shift. When she seized control in the second period, that specific 5-player combination decimated everything else on the hardwood. The moment she stepped off the court, productivity plummeted into an absolute abyss, and there is absolutely zero luck involved in that. This is not some statistical anomaly. It is hard mathematical proof validating the exact tragedy your own vision witnessed. Wondering what a broken system looks like live? It manifests as a perimeter player grabbing the rock and freezing, generously allowing the entire opposition to reset their formation. It looks like agonizingly slow offensive sets draining the entire timer while 5 players stand frozen in concrete. It is the agonizing sight of the rock being endlessly swung east and west without ever threatening the rim. When they squared up against Senegal, the rookie phenom weaponized the opponent's aggression. The moment they brought the heat, she punished them, launching the rock up the hardwood in the blink of an eye before anyone could even reset. Fast forward to the Puerto Rico clash, and that explosive magic completely vanished. The entire offensive engine stalled out, limping along in total disarray from the opening tip to the final buzzer. As I pointed out earlier, the prodigy absolutely possessed the vision to thread that needle, bypassing the entire defense to hit Hamby perfectly in stride, and then bam, the squad is instantly punishing that brutal size mismatch down in the paint, right? Yet what actually unfolded? Angel stepped in, killed our momentum, dragged the tempo through the mud, and the possession crashed and burned with Hamby, tossing their floor general to the hardwood for a devastating offensive penalty. Letting the rookie run the point would have entirely bypassed that disaster. But here is the massive red flag that should have every single fan hitting the panic button. This island squad is absolutely not the Spanish powerhouse. They are nowhere near the caliber of the Italian national team. The heavyweights looming on the horizon boast elite defensive switching, ruthless tactical precision, and the raw physical power to utterly dismantle a sluggish, plodding offensive scheme. A simple zone defense from the massive underdogs laid bare an uncomfortable truth. The American squad's heartbeat relies solely on their rookie sensation, accelerating the tempo. A truly elite roster will absolutely feast on that exact same vulnerability. You cannot casually jog the rock up the court against the Europeans and pray that your veteran guard miraculously saves the possession with highly contested pull-up twos. Relying on that kind of hero ball is a guaranteed death sentence on the international stage. Whenever the generational playmaker gripped the leather in that matchup, magic followed. Whether it was a lethal dish to the corner, a slashing drive forcing contact, or a majestic cross-court laser that shattered the zone. Conversely, whenever the team attempted to operate without her acting as the maestro, the stars and stripes morphed into an unrecognizable, chaotic mess. They looked lethargic and disjointed, moving as if 5 strangers were executing 5 completely different playbooks while praying for a miracle. The game tape tells a brutally honest story. Breaking it down trip by trip down the floor reveals a glaring reality. When the rookie commands the rock, the scoring machine breathes fire. When she is banished to the corner, helplessly watching her teammate dribble wildly into trapped coverage, the system completely dies. As the broadcast called it, the sharpshooter anticipates the trajectory, intercepts the leather, and sprints the length of the hardwood for a sensational chance at a 3-point play. She kisses the layup off the window, immediately turning to her squad to confirm the bucket fell, and steps up to the charity stripe. She was begging the officials for a flagrant call, firmly believing she took a brutal shot to the dome, so let us review the replay. The Phenom reads the pass perfectly and erupts down the floor. Let us check the angle. Wow! The official entirely blocked our view of the contact, but she definitely absorbed a blow to the skull. The young star is fiercely pleading her case to the whistleblowers. Astonishingly, the head coach witnessed every single second of this brilliance unfold right before her eyes, yet stubbornly refused to even utter her star rookie's name during the post-game presser. Following this absolute circus, the blatant icing out, the selfish isolation plays, and a leader-dodging simple media inquiries, the young prodigy finally took the microphone. After surviving an evening where veterans refused to pass, rivals turned a blind eye on the hardwood, and her own coach practically erased her existence. The sensation broke her silence. Surprisingly, her response lacked any of the venom you would anticipate from someone enduring such blatant disrespect. She merely described their scoring efforts as disjointed. She credited the opposing defense for disrupting their tempo, acknowledged their sluggish rhythm, and confidently promised that the locker room would resolve the issues. End of story. 0 petty jabs, 0 pointing fingers, and absolutely no trace of the burning anger that millions of viewers were experiencing for her. It was a flawlessly poised, incredibly selfless response from a superstar who possessed every justification in the universe to torch the entire organization. The interviewer then interjected, stating they wanted to dive into a specific topic, wondering whether the squad's blunders were forced by the island's relentless pressure, or if the Americans were simply shooting themselves in the foot. The playmaker responded thoughtfully, admitting that their wounds were primarily brought on by their own poor execution. She explained that blown assignments on the defensive end, combined with second-guessing, severely chained them down, turning fast-break opportunities into brutal uphill battles, particularly after dead-ball situations. The reporter acknowledged the heavy American presence, but pivoted to ask for her assessment of the opposing roster's performance that evening. Without missing a beat, she praised their relentless competitive spirit and undeniable passion on the hardwood. She highlighted their intense physical play, complimented the electric atmosphere generated by the phenomenal supporters, and briefly paused to apologize for a loud jet passing overhead. Now, pause and truly digest the toxic environment brewing inside that arena. One veteran was actively playing politics, throwing up desperate bricks just to ensure she dominated the usage rate and secured her spot in the hierarchy. Another was purposefully executing court vision that magically ignored the wide-open Phenom, while the woman in charge tap-danced around media probes regarding the biggest draw in the history of the sport. Amidst that overwhelming hostility, the young prodigy calmly stepped to the podium and only focused on the collective unit needing to sync up their timing. Nothing more. She brought zero ego, stripped away the drama, and shielded her teammates. In her continued remarks, she emphasized that securing possession of the leather had to be a top priority. Unsure of the exact distribution statistics on the final box score, She noted that in battles like these, the squad desperately needed to manufacture far more effortless layups directly at the basket. As she mentioned the need to elevate their intensity, the press pressed further, asking if the scoring drought was caused by the opponent's lockdown scheme or merely cold shooting. Ever the diplomat, she commended the collective effort but firmly insisted that the American roster possessed a much higher ceiling. This glaring juxtaposition is the ultimate takeaway from the entire fiasco. While her peers and superiors were ruthlessly hunting for their own glory, she was the lone soldier fighting for the crest on the jersey. In that entire press area, Clark stood alone as the sole voice focused on victory, and she managed that right after being deliberately iced out of the rotation. She had to witness the offensive strategy crumble the second she left the floor, and endure a media session where her own head coach blatantly ignored the historic performance she delivered just 24 hours prior. A reporter pressed her, asking, Coach Lawson discussed testing out varied combinations, trying to discover where that crucial chemistry sparks. How did you personally handle navigating all those unpredictable roster shifts between last night and today? Clark answered smoothly. We knew finding our rhythm would be a process. Things felt rather sluggish early on, particularly with the constant substitutions breaking up the flow. Still, staying adaptable is mandatory. Honestly, that is the fundamental nature of this entire sport anyway. Certain nights, your court time vanishes. Other matchups might require you to accept a lesser role and provide a spark from the sidelines. Staying sharp for whenever your number gets called is non-negotiable, and I feel our entire roster handled that beautifully. Heck, we rarely even know the starting five until tip-off. Preparation is all you can control. Now, what does a response like that reveal about the core character of Caitlyn Clark? Because honestly, throwing a little shade in that moment would have required zero effort. A single smirk, one vaguely sarcastic remark, and social media would have instantly weaponized it. Yet, she refused to play that game, choosing instead to break down their zone defense and express unwavering confidence in her squad. Maintaining that kind of grace under fire is rare for any athlete, let alone someone navigating an atmosphere packed with this much tension. The harsh reality, though? Taking the high road will not magically resolve the underlying chaos, especially while Coach Lawson continues treating real games like experimental chemistry labs. Meanwhile, Stephanie White remains perched on the sideline, stubbornly clinging to her strategy of keeping the ball out of her stars' hands. Looking ahead, the heavy hitters remaining on the United States' bracket will absolutely punish those tactical blunders far worse than Puerto Rico ever could. Glaring structural flaws do not simply vanish into thin air just because your point guard acts like a total professional in front of the microphones. Consequently, this massive storm of controversy is going to trail right behind her when she returns to Indiana. The 2026 Fever campaign is looming, and she steps into that arena armed with terrifying clarity about what happens when a coaching staff desperately tries to suppress her impact. She witnessed it firsthand on the national stage, and she endured that exact nightmare under Stephanie White throughout her entire previous professional campaign. Now she heads home fueled by a burning need to validate a truth that should already be undisputed. Her individual brilliance peaks when she is the primary engine of the floor. The entire roster thrives when the offense flows through her vision, meaning the only logical basketball move is to give her total command of the playbook. Should Lawson wake up and realize this before the medal rounds conclude, it changes everything. The American squad could morph into an absolute nightmare for opponents almost instantly. We caught a terrifying glimpse of that potential during the second period against Senegal, proving exactly the kind of dominance that unfolds when Clark is handed the reins. There is absolutely zero justification for that explosive style not becoming the standard expectation every single night. The firepower exists, and her historic resume already guarantees success. To top it off, Clark just dedicated an entire media session to proving she absolutely refuses to become a locker room liability over the drama. Drop your thoughts in the comments if you believe the national team will finally start respecting Caitlyn's talent. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and smash the notification bell so you catch all our updates. Tap the video popping up on your screen right now, and I will catch you in the next episode.